No, he hasn't offered me a job.
So you wouldn't take one if he did offer?
I have been offered jobs in America. That is true, but not directly by him.
And you wouldn't take one if he did offer?
I don't think that would be appropriate. I'm British, not American. I'm a big supporter. I want him to win. I believe the world would be a safer place if he does win, but no.
Nigel Farage might not be standing in the election, but it hasn't stopped him from challenging the Prime Minister to a live TV debate on immigration. Reform UK are putting stopping the boats at the heart of their campaign launch in Dover this morning. Their honorary president, Mr Farage, will be there, but first he's speaking to us. Good morning.
Good morning.
I have to ask you before we start, why did you decide not to stand as an MP in this election?
I was going to, and I had a proper 6-month plan that I was about to unveil. And of course, we got this snap election, which is not unrelated to the issue of the small boats. And I just thought, I can't spend 6 weeks in a constituency campaigning from scratch and go out and campaign around the country. So I chose the latter route.
But if you had a 6-month plan, you were ready to go.
I was ready to go, but I couldn't do it in 6 weeks. Unlike the Conservative Party, Labour Party, I mean, they've been knocking on doors in these constituencies for 100 years. They've got masses of data. I'd be starting with zero, and 6 weeks, just not long enough. But, one thing I've learned through my political career and campaigning career, whatever the issue is I can do plenty from outside Parliament.
Are you sure it's not because Donald Trump has offered you a job?
No, he hasn't offered me a job.
So you wouldn't take one if he did offer?
I have been offered jobs in America. That is true, but not directly by him.
And you wouldn't take one if he did offer?
I don't think that would be appropriate. I'm British, not American. I'm a big supporter. I want him to win. I believe the world would be a safer place if he does win, but no.
You're not the leader of Reform. That is, of course, Richard Tice. Why are you challenging the Prime Minister to a TV debate?
I came here 4 years ago and I went out to sea. I filmed the small boats coming. I made a prediction that unless we acted very swiftly, very decisively, as the Australians had done a decade before, I said there'd be an invasion. Well, here we are today, 3,800 boats later, 125,000 people later, and we have a very, very serious problem. And what really upsets me in this election is there was no honest debate about this. Keir Starmer is saying he'll smash the gangs. Well, we've been talking about smashing the drugs gangs for decades. It makes no difference. And the Rwanda plan can't work. And I think the main reason this general election has been called is Sunak's promise that the boats would go in July. He knew those boats would not go in July because the European Court of Human Rights won't allow it. And I think that's the proper debate that we need to have. We cannot control our borders fully over issues like the small boats, all the while this court in Strasbourg has jurisdiction over us. And I just want people, and it may well be British people say, well, look, we'll have to live with it because we want to be part of this court. But we can't do both.
Is that your answer? Is your answer then just to leave that court? Is that your solution to the problem?
Well, we will not be able to deport people in the way that we used to. I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, the last Labour government, by 2010, they were deporting up to 45,000 people a year who came to Britain illegally. Since then, that court has given itself more and more power. Yes, it's part of the answer.
So what's the rest of the answer? You would like a proper debate on it. What's the rest of the policy answer?
Well, I think we have to take a leaf out of the Australians' book and say that we're a very generous country. We've given refugee status to 500,000 people since 2016. We've more than done our bit. But nobody that comes into this country via criminal trafficking gangs across the English Channel will ever be given permanent leave to remain.
Well, that's the Rwanda policy, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but it doesn't work because of ECHR. They put into place a piece of law in a British Parliament that has already once been overruled and will be overruled
So
again.
The only difference between your position and the Tory position is leaving the ECHR, just so we're very clear.
No, the difference is I'm talking about actually being able to do something. What the Tories are doing, frankly, is conning the public.
But the only difference between what you're proposing and what the Tories are proposing is leaving the ECHR.
No. I mean, we could move on to legal immigration, of course, where under Rishi Sunak,
you would like a proper debate on illegal immigration, and I'm asking you what the difference is between you and the Tories, and I'm struggling to find one.
The difference is we would deport people, we would not allow anybody to stay, and we would take back sovereignty over our borders. Mr. Sunak refuses to do that.
I'm interested in a word that you used when you were talking about the small boats there, and that was invasion. Do you think that's an appropriate word to use when we're talking about immigration?
What would you call 3,800 boats? How would you describe it?
I'm asking you whether you feel like invasion is an appropriate word to use when we're talking about people.
I used the word 4 years ago as a warning, and since then, over 100,000 young men who have destroyed their identity documents, many of whom have come from dangerous war zones, many of whom, if we believe ISIS, who said they would flood the continent with their operatives, could do us great harm. I think this is an issue that really needs us to declare a national security emergency, particularly after the events of October the 7th, what is happening in Gaza, and increased radicalization.
But you're walking a bit of a difficult line here, aren't you? I want to play some remarks that you made over the weekend for our listeners who may have missed them. Just have a quick listen to this.
We have a growing number of young people in this country who do not subscribe to British values, in fact, loathe much of what we stand for. So what do you do?
Who are we talking about there?
Oh, I think we see them on the streets of London every Saturday.
What do they look like? Oh, we're talking about...
What do they look like?
Are we talking about Muslims here?
We are.
Many people have interpreted those remarks, Nigel Farage, as deeply racist and inappropriate. Are you sorry about them?
Well, of course, because they don't want to have a debate. They're happy to keep their eyes closed to what is a real problem. Listen to what I said, a growing number of young people. And that's the truth of it. If you look at our inner cities, look at some of our towns, look at some of the districts, see who was elected recently in local council elections, we've got the growth of sectarianism in our country. I hoped we'd never ever see it, but we are seeing it. People acting and operating and voting along purely political lines. And what is really, really worrying, is that pushing on for a quarter of young British Muslims support the concept of jihad. Now, these are not British values in any way at all. And I'm saying there is a problem. Everyone knows there's a problem. It's just that some people choose not to talk about it.
But it's the language that you're using, isn't it? It's interpreted very widely as racism. You're accusing Muslim people who were born in this country of not having British values, of not being the same. You are creating somebody who's not quite British enough.
Sectarian politics that excludes women totally is not a modern day British value.
But it's also not something that every British Muslim would like to see.
Well, here's the point. Actually, the one group that are most worried about it are British Muslims. Because if you're a British Muslim living here and you're seeing this growing number of young people subscribing to views that you yourself find abhorrent, you think, goodness me, life could become uncomfortable for me as well. So look, this is a problem that needs to be talked about. Of course, the Labour and Conservative parties won't discuss it at all because they caused the problem. And the problem has been caused by irresponsible mass immigration without integration. And that really is the key point here.
But those kinds of remarks are not going to help integration, are they?
To identify the truth and to speak to that growing sense of unease that is being felt by millions of British people as they look at disturbing scenes after victories in some of our towns and inner cities.
Yeah.
Just a
but
few
the problem
weeks ago.
is, Nigel Farage, that what you're doing is creating division, and politics is about finding answers. And I've asked you this morning for answers to questions, to really fundamental questions. Actually, you say you would like a debate on this kind of thing, and all you can provide is division.